This year marks the 40th anniversary of Morbid Tales, and so it feels like high time to finally rank the discography of Celtic Frost, starting with Morbid Tales in 1984. This was initially released as an EP, but was upgraded to a mini LP with some additional songs added, and one that had a pretty significant impact on the early black metal scene, and one that Fenriz of Darkthrone brings up quite a bit as his influences. And when you listen to Darkthrone guitar tone in particular, you can definitely hear that Celtic Frost vibe coming through. And speaking of which, I love that even after various style changes, this band has always had that very signature guitar tone. I don't even know exactly how to describe it, but you hear it, and despite it being pretty unassuming, you can instantly recognize it. I don't know if it's a hot take to say that I actually like this album more than To Mega Therion, and I'm going to share a lot of thoughts about that in just a moment, but I just find this to be a lot more focused and cohesive. Maybe it's a little unfair, because again, it is kind of like a mini LP, EP, whatever. In any case, a very brisk 25-minute jam with some doomy energy as well. I think every track is great, and I love the atmosphere of it. It's just raw and ugly and gross and very, yes, black metal. Before that was even a thing, so for all those reasons, it's going to perfection. Next up is To Mega Therion in 1985. Let me your skill-bearing hand, so I'm ready to So yeah, possible shock here. As much as I love Morbid Tales, I'm gonna say it again, I think that this album is pretty overrated.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Great Geiger artwork and some great moments, but even after years of listening and re-listening, and I even own a physical copy of the damn thing, I just find it to be very boring in places. I appreciate its legacy, but I've just never really cared for all the plotting, repetitious riffing, and doom metal elements. Still, it's easily one of their better and more important albums. I dig The Usurper, Jewel Throne, parts of Circle of Tyrants, and the first half of Eternal Summer, but man, does this become a slog to get all the way through for me at times. But this is also the birthplace of so many quintessential Tom G. Warrior ooms. So with that said, I'm putting this album at fantastic. Next up is Into the Pandemonium in 1987. The Wall of Voodoo Mexican radio cover feels like such a goofy way to open up an album with this cover art. Big left turn in tone from the last one, as is I Won't Dance. I really wish I had been there when this came out just to see kind of what people's reactions were at the time, because I just feel like myself hitting play on this after To Mega Therion, I'd be like, what the fuck? And then what the heck are Mesmerized and Sorrows of the Moon with those whiny vocals? Like, it feels like a very bad attempt at goth rock amidst a few solid riffs. There are still some good jams though, namely the raging Inner Sanctum, which feels more on par with the last two albums, and Babylon Fell, which is also worth checking out. And even though it feels kind of out of place, as a big Skinny Puppy fan, I do enjoy the Industrial Detour one in their pride. Mostly a very inconsistent and overly ambitious mess that just does not come together in any meaningful way, and yet it became their most successful album. I'm going to put this one at good tier, I guess, which brings us to Cold Lake in 1988.
How embarrassing.
Now this is one of those famously hated metal albums alongside the likes of Morbid Angel's Elude Divinum Insanus. Highly influenced by glam metal, but I feel like I also hear a touch of Faith No More in there at times, who at this point had already released We Care a Lot and Introduce Yourself. Regardless, this is not as good as any of those things. I do think it does deserve the hate in this case, starting off on an already corny note with Seduce Me Tonight, and it never really improves from there, though there are some decent riffs to be found. It occasionally gets my foot tapping, but the vocals are just awful. Half the time I'm envisioning Dr. Roxo playing these songs, right down to the cheesy lyrics. Once They Were Eagles is listenable, I guess. It's not the worst thing I have ever heard, but the band let it go out of print and it's not on Spotify, if that says anything. Yeah, it's going to yikes. Then we got Vanity, Nemesis in 1990. Now, it feels like they're kind of fusing elements of the previous album with kind of a crossover thrash feel here. It almost feels kind of like Suicidal Tendencies meets 90s Megadeth. Decent enough opener in The Heart Beneath. Wine in My Hand successfully got me banging my head, and we actually got a pretty nice And Restless Seas is kind of fun and has some great bass and soloing. Also dig the eclectic riffing on Phallic Tantrum. A Kiss or a Whisper is a straight thrasher, and Nemesis makes for a head bobber of a closer. Still some cheesier and unpleasant moments too though, like Wings of Solitude, and sometimes songs start off promising only to fall off, like This Island Earth. Not terrible, not really great either though. I would probably honestly put this about at the same level as Into the Pandemonium, maybe even a little bit lower than that. Before we get to their final album, just a reminder to share your own thoughts down in the comments. This is just my own objective opinion on this very kind of inconsistent discography, let's say. Also, like the video if you're enjoying it, dislike if you dislike it, and subscribe for plenty more like it. But that brings us to Monotheist in 2006. Now, I know that this is a pretty significant departure from their original sound, but goddamned if it isn't one of the heaviest and most evil-sounding records I have ever heard, period. So many songs just feel like malevolent mantras designed to summon demons and elder gods like opener Progeny, Ground, As Abysmi Veldath, and a dying god coming into human flesh. So many parts I can't help but bob my head to hypnotically while screaming along. The guitar tone is just suffocatingly gross feeling, carrying plenty of doom energy, but also maybe taking a few sludgy tips from the likes of High on Fire. And here Tom's gothier sounding vocals actually work in a very menacing way on tracks like Drown in Ashes, a track that also builds and builds in such a delightfully psychotic sounding way. Just pure evil. Like that's all I get from this album, and it's done so effectively. It makes those like longer drawn out doom sections that normally I don't like either, like just work so well. Honestly, it's hard to believe that this is the same band that also brought us Cold Lake, but so glad Tom continued with this sound on the Triptychon project, which I would love to hear more from. But yeah, for all those reasons, it is going to perfection, and honestly, it's become like one of my favorite metal albums in general. Y'all check out this playlist for more thrash metal rankings, or this one for your personal YouTube recommendation. Again, share your thoughts down in the comments. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.